Hey, everybody. As I told you last week, we did not plan on doing this as a two-parter, but given that I got travel, Sarah's got travel, it's the dog days of summer, and she didn't want to run screaming from the conversation at the hour mark. We just kept talking and turned this into a two-part, um, hashtag life thing. So um, here is part 2 of the life advice Ask Me Anything episode with Sarah Isgur, the host of Advisory Opinions and fancy pants person over at SCOTUS blog. Any life hacks that are relatively unknown?
Napping? Is that a life hack? No, I mean, I actually kind of mean that in the sense that, like, I think people do not take sleep seriously enough. Speaking of excellent books, let me see if I can see the full name. I mean, it's just called Sleep, but where did it? Sorry, Adam, I'm not seeing it right now. I read a book a few years ago that was just like a pop sciencey book on sleep. And it's a great reminder, like, this is like taking the trash out from your brain and helping you remember the new things. So if you're not getting enough sleep, like, nothing else is going to work right. Your mood, your weight, your memory, your work product, your ability to love and be loved. And I think especially as you get older, your time is very valuable. There's a lot of trade-offs. And so sleep is the one that people cut corners on. I try very hard not to.
I have a whole spiel about this. I have this visualization thing. I'm not a visualization guy. I think that's not shocking anybody. But like 25 years ago, I saw a brief segment on like CNN or Headline News or something explaining what happens to your brain when you nap. And it's an oil change primarily, right? It's taking out the dirty spinal fluid and replacing it with clean spinal fluid. And it's also a hard drive backup, right? It's where you start moving stuff from short-term memory to long-term memory. That's more REM than anything, but still, which you don't get in a nap. But anyway, I think of that circa 1999 computer animation when I'm trying to take a nap. And for whatever reason, I don't think of it as me being like lazy. I think it's like my brain doing an oil change thing. Yeah. And it really helps me fall asleep. But sleep is good. Sleep is really important. And it's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but you actually be more productive if you get enough sleep. Do you want me to ask you the big law question, or do you want to just get out of here?
Yeah, no, let's do it.
So this is the first one on my list. I ignored it, but this is more of an AO thing. So if you like this question, people, and you don't listen to AO, there's something wrong with you. I'm an associate at a big law firm. I'm on the partnership track and will be up for a non-equity partner in about 2 years. I'm confident I would make it to partner, but I feel burnt out and I'm ambivalent about partnership due to the amount of work and other lifestyle effects. Am I just being lazy and should go all out? Out of all of your friends and colleagues who became partners, how many were glad? How many were regretful, and why? What's a better career track for being a federal judge? Law firm partner or AUSA?
Whew. Okay, there's a lot in there. I do know a few happy partners, but I think they were happy associates too. I don't mean that, like, any job, there's good days and bad days, and there's parts of your job that you like and don't like. But if you're hating it now, I don't think being partner is going to make you hate it less. The reason to stick it out, if you're the person that you described yourself as, is, you need to support a family, your parents. That's a sacrifice you're willing to make, basically. The problem, of course, even with that sacrifice, is you're already probably feeling a little resentful. And, they're basically paying you for all of your time. And it's not just like the time you're at the office. I mean, phones and email and everything has actually made lawyers' lives pretty awful. Clients can now and expect to reach you all the time. And it is a service industry. So, as an associate, you actually get protected from a lot of that stuff. But once you're a partner, the client is calling you on Friday night. And you're going to have to pick up that call. So sounds like you're on your way out. Best track to federal judgeship, that's not the right question. It's not that an AUSA or a law firm partner, one is better to become a federal judge. that is going to be far more about the reputation that you've garnered with your friends and colleagues who then go into an administration and are picking judges. It makes no difference in that sense. Being an AUSA is, I mean, pretty universally described as the best job in law. The reason that people don't stay is because it doesn't pay much money. So if you're willing to give that up and take the big pay cut, you'll be very happy as an AUSA, most likely, because you run your own cases, you are wearing the white hat, you get to stand up many days and say, you know, my name is so-and-so and I represent the United States of America. And that is a cool thing in your job. But they're hard jobs to get, even though it's a huge pay cut, because people love them and they don't leave them very often. So there aren't that many openings oftentimes. But yeah, it sounds like you should leave the law firm. It's good that you were there. I think you should be happy that you spent the time that you did. You will have learned more than you think sitting here right now about the practice of law that you didn't learn in your law school career, because law school doesn't teach you actually how to do law at all.
All right, I think we're done there. I think we've done as well as we could do. We went long, and I've abused your time, so there's that. So maybe we'll do this more often if people want, or maybe we finally scratched this itch and people realize
it's not as good as they hoped it would be.
It's not as good as they hoped it would be.
Yeah.
Who knows? Or maybe editing.
We didn't do any dating advice.
We didn't. I didn't get any. Like, I feel like questions went to 1,000 different channels and sources and Twitter.
Well,
and this
Dom
and that.
wanted to know about the trade-offs of having children. Like if you're newly married, let's say, and you're like, ooh, do I have children or not? I think we're both pretty pro-natal.
Yeah, I'm pro-baby. You know, the Dispatch's paternity, maternity, parental leave thing is about as generous as any place I've known, because Steve and I went into this saying we're going to be pro-baby.
But what were the trade-offs for you? I mean, again, gender differences here.
About having kids?
Yeah.
About having a kid? Well, I mean, like, I tell people this all the time, that all the cliches are true. It is the worst, most grueling, kind of disgusting, messy thing you can possibly do with your life, and it's totally worth it.
How old were you when your daughter was born?
They told me there'd be no math. Probably 34, 32, something like that.
Okay.
And
I think that's relevant, because for me, I had already, like, I didn't want to go to brunch anymore. I was getting bored with the hedonist life I was living.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been as Washington social as
same.
lot of people. So like,
yeah, so we have that in common. Like, we'd rather be home.
I'm sure you are in the thick of this right now, but like, long days, short years is like that Hemingway 6-word contest, winner for what parenthood is like. My iPad throws up pictures of my daughter from like, I took her water skiing recently, and she was like, "Yeah, I haven't water skied since I was like 12." And for me, it's like, oh, so like the second Obama term. That wasn't very long ago, but for her, it's like more than half of her lifetime, and it's just like the stuff it throws up at you about, like the rapidity of it all is staggering, and I guarantee you this is going to pop into your head when the brisket graduates from college, and you're going to be like, I remember Jonah saying this to me and thinking it was BS, but it goes in a heartbeat.
Yeah. What's weird is I don't have a great memory.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even now, thanks to my Aura frame, I'm like, we started over. And so Nate was just born on the Aura frame. It switches one picture a day for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I can see that. I know that happened, but I don't actually remember what it felt like, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I don't remember what he sounded like. Like all those memories are basically gone. Probably because the lack of sleep, by the way. A note
Lack
back
of sleep,
to
and also I
sleep.
think nature screws with women in all sorts of ways
Oh, for sure.
so that they don't remember how horrible childbirth was. And then the pharmaceutical industrial complex adds to that because if you had a C-section, the anesthesia scrambles your memory severely. And I know this firsthand because, as I'm sure I told you, my wife's epidural didn't take. And it was a medieval experience. And at one point, the anesthesiologist was like, don't worry, she won't remember any of this. I was like, yeah, mother blanker, but I will.
My anesthesia did not take for my C-section. I absolutely remember all of it.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
than I remember them handing me the baby at the end.
Did they put you out at the end? Eventually?
No, they actually took a break, had a team meeting to decide what to do, and decided that they were too far gone and to just go.
So my wife made me vow that the only role I had in this whole thing, she didn't want to be in the delivery room unless it was necessary. The only thing was that I be a zealous advocate for her pain management. And then we get in there because it's an emergency C-section.
Oh,
the reason I
yeah.
didn't sue is because it was an emergency and they probably saved the baby's life. And I gotta, can't screw with karma too much. But she screamed at the top of her lungs when they put her hands in her belly, in her insides. They had a, oh crap, what do we do moment? A little huddle. Tried again, up the epidural. Second time they went in, she kicked over the surgical table. And so they were like, I guess we're going to put her out. And when my daughter, so I'm in the recovery room after this medieval experience, and my wife wakes up and she, first question, how's the baby? What's the baby? How's the, and I'm like, sweetie, she's great. APGAR score after 1 minute, after 5 minutes, blah, blah, give her weight, size, all that kind of stuff. And she's, oh, that's great. Passes out. Wakes up 30 seconds later. How's the baby? Because her short-term memory is going to be completely fried. It was total groundhog. I had to repeat my performance because the one terrifying thing is, what if the time, like, Jesus, Jess, you keep asking me that, is the time she remembers for the rest of her life? So I had to keep faking enthusiasm like the 20th time. All the nurses are laughing at me. And it's like, the baby's great, because I didn't know what was going to stick in her memory. And anyway. But that feels like a couple months ago. I mean, in weird ways. It's just, it goes by very fast. So
I felt like when people were describing parenthood to me, they were basically saying that I was going to die and be reborn as a parent, that like my life as I knew it would end. And I took that really seriously. And I do not feel that way.
Yeah, I don't feel that way. You're still you.
Yeah.
You just have this other thing in your life that's more important than you.
Ooh, can I ask you? Wait, I have a question for you. Scott and I were discussing this.
I can go as long as you want, but I thought you were on a time limit. So, like, I'm happy to stay here. We'll do this as a two-parter or whatever. That's fine. So go ahead.
People talk about like what's the happiest day of your life, and they all say like the day my kid was born or the day I got married.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really weird as I started to think about it this week, because that day laid the foundation for my happiness.
Yeah.
But it's not the happiest day of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Like that'd be weird.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the happiest day of your life? I mean, your wife almost died.
Yeah, no. I mean, happiness when it all worked out okay was definitely a thing. But that's also hard to mix from relief and sleep deprivation and all that. I'm kind of with you on this. What do they call it? Anhedonia, right? Incapable of joy. This idea that like there was this day where I was just skipping around whistling zippity doodah out of my nethers all day long. I don't think is a real thing. I think there are moments, right? And I will say, like,
but
my
I
happiest.
Even think, okay, well, so when I think of like my happiest moments, I'm thinking back to like, an incredible moment with all of my friends and the sunset, and we're on the, my first campaign, and we're in Austin and all of that. But if I'm being really honest with myself, like, yes, but when you're in your 20s, at least for me, there's also a profound loneliness in your 20s. You don't have your people yet. You don't have your family that you're going to build. And so like those moments are incredible and life-changing in their own way. But again, happiest day of my life? Probably not.
Yeah. I would say my happiest moments are this we're going to descend back into career stuff here, but like I remember when I was in my 20s telling my television producer boss that one of the reasons why I wanted to get out of television is there wasn't enough glory in it. That was the word I kept using. And he kept thinking it was weird. And because he thought I wanted more money. And I was like, no, like, I mean, I would like more money. Yes. If you're handing out more money, I'll take more money. But it's sort of like Cuba Gooding Jr. in Jerry Maguire, the Quan, right? The was like I wanted more earned success. I wanted to make my mark. I was ambitious, all these kinds of things, and doing the kind of work I was doing wasn't too great. And I assumed for a long time that when I hit certain fame benchmark kind of things, that it would scratch that itch. And it took a long time for me to realize that it doesn't. And that in fact, scratching that itch is not that important. And so like, you've now done a lot of Sunday shows. I'm sure the first time you did it, you thought it was really cool. And before you ever did one, I'm sure you thought it'd be so awesome if I were one of those people. And then you start doing it and you're like, I mean, you don't want to stop doing it necessarily, but like...
There's always more mountain to climb. There's always someone who's ahead of you, moving faster than you. I came to DC with 3 goals. Go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, have a parking spot on West Exec Drive, and be on a Sunday show. Those were my 3 things. I did not achieve all 3 for what it's worth. I never had the parking spot on West Exec Drive, though I have, been in West Exec Drive plenty of times now, I guess. That's like the prestigious parking lot of sorts between the West Wing and the old executive office building. So it was like me saying like, I don't need to have a specific job, but if you have that parking spot, like you've got one of the jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. But like my experience has been, not only do you never get there, you actually feel further away the more you know how much further there is.
Yeah. And also the fact that it's less satisfying, right? So like, when I'm not saying this to flex, like I got a #1 New York Times bestseller. I was very happy about that. I was really psyched. When I had my book part, like that was joyful. Don't get me wrong. That was great. But I have a book party about it. And all these people that I think are a big deal and friends and they come and the whole thing made me uncomfortable. And, I remember going home and saying to my wife, this was not at all how I thought I would feel. And it was kind of a weird letdown. And so I got into this cul-de-sac because the biggest moments of happiness for the last 22 years for me, not necessarily most entertaining moments or whatever, but true like life satisfaction, happiness, or when your kid sets out a goal that is really, really important to them and they accomplish it and they feel like they've done it, right? I find more and more real happiness for me is like other directed rather than for myself.
Okay, so it's not that like she accomplishes the goal and you think it reflects well on you, or no?
But I think she's going to be happy. Like she found
her
a passion.
Happiness is where your happiness is coming from.
She found a passion and executed and got recognized for it. That gives me unalloyed real happiness in ways that a lot of other things don't. And you find it like, is the brisket old enough to do like Pee-wee soccer or any of that kind of stuff?
I told you, we're not going to do any team sports, no travel sports. But you know what he's really obsessed with is he's really stubborn. So, but he has more focus than most kids his age. So it kind of balances itself out. Anyway, maybe 5 months ago, maybe a little bit longer now, 7 months ago, he was like, I am going to do handstands. And I was like, okay, well, here's the steps. First thing we're going to do, headstands, and he's like, nope. He's like, I will just do handstands. And so he would just hurl his body upward and immediately fall. And here we are 7 months later. He does handstands every day. And now he can do a handstand. And I will tell you, Jonah, you are right. Like the first time he really held it up there and had some control, I was blown away. It was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my whole life.
Yeah. I mean, again, not to go back to Parenthood, but that scene where his kid catches the ball in the big game and whatever, and Steve Martin like almost empties his bladder in joy about it. Like that kind of speaks to me. I can't let you go without mentioning this. Do you know what Joseph Schumpeter what his famous quote is about his life goals?
Mm-mm.
So he said at the beginning of his career, he set out to be the greatest economist in the world, the best horseman in all of Austria, and the greatest lover in all of Vienna. And then he said, so far it hasn't worked out too well with the horses. Which I always thought was one of the great humble brags of all time.
It was really important to me, speaking of goals, to not have goals that were too prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, it wasn't that I wanted to go to the White House Correspondents' Center, to be clear. It was that I wanted to have accomplished something that would get me invited.
That warranted it, yeah.
Yeah. And so like, and I didn't want to be prescriptive about what that would be. I just knew that if like you get invited to that, like you've done something that 18-year-old me will think is cool. I'm really allergic to narrow goal setting. Like being the best economist in the world, too narrow. Nope.
I think it'd be pretty cool. I just because it touches on this, of all of the accusations leveled against me and dispatch people generally, but like we're talking about me, the one I find the most preposterous, like this is I'll start broad. I'm sure you've realized this by now when you were doing your political stuff, you didn't have a comment section. You didn't get people emailing you like all this, like paying very close attention to your life.
No.
Right. The number of people I have to deal with on a given day for the last 25 years who think they are expert on my motivations is just friggin' astounding. I mean, like literally there's not a day that doesn't go by where somebody doesn't send me an email or tweet at me about how they've figured out why I said something or why I've done something. And the times they're correct is worse than random, right? It's like, because they have a sinister theory of the plot, right? They have a conspiracy theory kind of idea of what I'm doing. It actually steers them to wrong explanations overwhelmingly more often than even remotely correct ones. So that's the big picture point. The minor point is the charge that I do what I do and say what I say so I can go to Georgetown cocktail parties is so sand-poundingly stupid and contrary. Like I send little dancing Snoopy emojis to the producers when they cancel my hits on CNN.
I love a canceled hit. It is the best feeling.
One of the greatest feelings in the world. And
I don't know how to describe it to people, but like you think for me as a woman, right, 'cause it includes an hour of hair and makeup. So like at minimum, the next 2 hours of my life are booked.
Right.
And then
now
you're
free.
Get it back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And like
now
my
you can go
brand of
tickle your
feminism,
kid or take a nap or whatever. You know?
My brand of feminism also does not include hair and makeup. I think it is one of those things we will, like 100 years from now, they will look back on and we will look as stupid as the court of Versailles with their like caked on arsenic.
Okay, I got a man question for you about this. I mean, this is a serious man question.
Yeah.
So the things women do, hair, makeup, high heel shoes, clothes, all these kinds of things that are let's just say broadly inconvenient or uncomfortable. How much of that, if you give me percentages, I would appreciate it, is done for the benefit of the male gaze, and how much of that is done in fear of female judgment?
Really hard because you almost have to like parse out. So I know this because I have to do hair and makeup for my job. So we can't count that because that's just mandatory.
Right. You wouldn't get paid if you refused to look up to snuff, right? If you just...
Yes, because it's considered looking professional, which again, I find offensive, but they're not wrong. Like that is what is considered professional for women. And by the way, I have a whole side thing about my hair. Like Jufros are not considered professional looking, but like that's what my hair is, y'all. Like that's the natural hair that I have. And so instead, we're going to spend an hour making my hair look like white girl hair. Okay. So I went to an event last month where I actually cared myself what I looked like. So I feel like if I can think back to that and I can answer your question of like, why did I care? A real chunk of the percentage was for my husband, but maybe not in the right way. Meaning like, I mean, obviously he
didn't embarrass him.
Right. I wanted him to be proud of me because it was his event and I was his arm candy. And I wanted him to like, you know, have his shoulders back a little bit that like, yeah, look what I got. You know, it was a reunion type thing. And then, so like, I wanted him to be proud. And maybe this is also part of that. I wanted like the people who I knew who were going to be at the reunion. I wanted them to think, like, wow, she's not pretty. It was like put together, fashionable, cool, like all of those things. But that required like the outfit to like all work and the hair and makeup and the earrings, like all of it needed to like make a full package. Does that answer the question?
About you in a professional DC context, yes, but I'm asking you to speak for all womankind, or at least all women in America, because
but you're missing it. Like I hear what you're saying, like women dress for other women, but it's that they're they want the other women to think they're getting the men. Like it's all sort of the same thing though, because it's still to please the male gaze. Like the women wouldn't be impressed if they didn't think the men were gonna like her more than me. So even if you're trying to impress the women, it's actually still based on the men.
I understand that like high heels are a thing that do certain things to the female form that are more attractive than male gaze.
Though again, that gets mixed up with a certain level of professionalism too. Like when I was at the Department of Justice, I wore heels every day. It was not to impress the men with my sexiness. It was because it made me look more powerful as well in a weird way.
Okay. But you're still on the witness stand.
Okay.
I put it to you that the share of heterosexual men who could identify the make and model of women's shoes and understand that they're like that these shoes are very expensive compared to those shoes is infinitesimally small.
And you're not going to sleep with those men because sort of by definition they're not interested in you.
Yeah, well, no, or just like those men. In fact, I would argue that you would be pretty attracted to those men. Like, I don't know. Oh, you mean the men who do know?
Yeah. I mean, if a guy's great Christian Louboutins, I'd be like, okay, we're not going home together.
I don't even know what Christian Louboutin is.
Are you serious? What about Manolo Blahnik?
That's the one, but I never know how to pronounce it, so I never say it. But that's the one I know.
Okay.
So, but the idea that, like, if you had really good knockoffs for those, that would make a difference to particularly the kind of men that you would be interested in is just preposterous, right?
Correct.
And yet there are women who spend an enormous amount of money on such things. Is it just a Veblen good thing? Is it to show up? But it's clearly to show off to people who recognize what they are, because otherwise you would just get the generics, as it were.
Yeah.
Right?
So I bought my first pair of Christian Louboutins last year as a gift to myself. And I when we have our Dispatch Live events or whatever, I think I've worn them one time to those. They are not for your purposes, Jonah, but they're like for me. Like I know, like yeah, it's sort of the power pose thing. Like I admit that there's a certain like second wave feminism to the whole thing that like I know what I'm wearing, I know they look cool. And you may not know why I look cool, but like that strut is because I bought my first pair of absurdly expensive shoes.
Okay, so let's flip it around because I can hear the vulgar Marxists out there talking about how we're just talking about. Well, we'll leave that for the solo. Dear old friend of mine, I don't see him much anymore because he lives in Boston, Vin Canato. We hung out a lot in the 1990s, and he drove a beat-up Honda Civic. And we convinced ourselves that we could be the best-looking men in the world with six-pack abs and a great sense of humor. But this Civic was, in effect, stealth technology. And, like, literally women could not see us through the distortion field of this craptacular car.
Yeah.
And like we used to joke we could pull up next to hot chicks and set ourselves on fire and all. You smell something? Like literally just could not see this kind of thing. There are many men, and now I don't take this that far. I was just hard up 20 something and complaining about my sex life. But the incel types and all these kinds of people are convinced that women are profoundly materialistic, and that short, fugly dudes with big bank accounts do great for a reason. How do you, when you hear that kind of thing, I'll be honest, I think it's true of some women. It's not true of the women I'm attracted to or the women I'm interested in talking to, but it's definitely true of some women. But like, how do you, when you hear that from young men, either in social media or how do you respond to it?
So first of all, I think you're wrong. I think that the women you're attracted to some extent, absolutely do that as well. I think we all do. There's
I don't mean like looking at them as they cross the street or something like that, or pose in magazines or whatever. I'm talking about like people I'm interested in dating, like who would.
That's what I mean, Jonah. You're wrong. You're just wrong. Right. So there is a peacock tail, sort of evolutionary phenomenon that all of us in sort of our, brain stems are looking for. But I think you have to think of it on a spectrum as well. And like both ends of the spectrum for men are usually bad. It's for women as well, by the way. So like a woman who shows up, unwashed, no makeup, her hair's like frizzy and she's wearing bad clothes is projecting a certain message that most men are going to find unattractive. And at the other end of the extreme, the like Atlantic City leopard print, bouffant, blue eyeshadow, all the makeup, and the boobs aren't real.
Real enough, but anyway, for these purposes. But go on.
Okay, so then for men, there's equivalent. So you have your beat up Honda on the one end of the spectrum. What sort of the evolutionary part of the brain is seeing is like, he can't provide for me and my kids. So that doesn't look very comforting. But on the other end of the extreme is the like guy in the leather whatever who pulls up in a Bugatti. Like, I am far less likely to be attracted to that guy than I am the beat up Honda guy. Because at least beat up Honda guy, like, maybe he's saving his money.
Right.
Like, like you don't know the full backstory. Maybe he's in grad
school.
Right.
Whatever.
Like Bugatti guy, I've got a pretty good idea that he is profligate. So also like that peacock's tail looks full of different types of parasites. So I'm looking, but like, I want to be clear, Jonah, I am looking for a good peacock tail. That is important to me. I can't imagine there's women for whom it's not important. Those men are wrong about what the good peacock tail looks like. But they're right that women are looking for the peacock tail.
Sure. Right. Can you explain for a second? I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. Can you explain for a second your theory about pheromones? And
Oh yeah. No, I absolutely believe that women can smell their mate. And that the good smell is a sign of genetic compatibility. That like, yeah, it's totally, this is like voodoo, but it's my voodoo. And I think my husband smells incredible.
I've not investigated this personally because it's of little consequence to me, but no, but I mean, broadly
We
speaking,
have a more
you're
heightened
obviously
sense of
right.
smell. We know that's
Yeah.
true. Why would women have a better sense of smell than men? Because we are the sexual selectors in this game. And so why would we smell you at all if it wasn't giving us information in the same way that like food that smells good has like a high fat content? I think men that smell good, probably it means there is a genetic compatibility there.
Oh, I don't, as you know, on this podcast, we don't allow for monocausal explanations for anything, but I definitely think that's it's plausible. That's a major thing. I mean, there's a reason why fresh babies smell so good to people, right?
Right, that's like a cheeseburger. You
Yeah,
know, like your DNA wants you to want fresh baby
yeah, yeah. And
because that's how it's going to replicate.
I remember James Q. Wilson wrote a great book called The Moral Sense, where he was kind of did his political scientist review of the evolutionary psychology stuff and all of that. And he had this great footnote in there about how one of the most understudied subjects in all of the social sciences is cuteness, because but for cuteness, a lot of babies are being thrown out of trees and caves, right?
Yeah. Especially 18 months old. I can speak from some experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
there
like
is a sense of responsibility, sure, but
a lot of kids are getting smacked more often if it's not for the cute. I mean, like the cuteness thing, it clearly pings something in you that there's a I mean, like you're a very
remember,
rare
baby
exception.
poop doesn't even smell bad.
Yeah, yeah. Although there's some babies that can test that proposition.
It starts smelling bad when they start eating solid foods, but like at the
Yeah.
beginning, your baby does not smell bad.
Yeah, yeah. And then like there's like we know from rats and all sorts of things that like if they sense some abnormality, some cancer or whatever, this was sort of like the entire plot device of the terrible movie version of World War Z, is that the zombies could tell if you had leukemia and therefore wouldn't eat your face. But it is a thing in nature, right? And so
I've got the worst sparrow parents in America who live at my house, and they have about 3 to 4 clutches a summer, and so 3 to 4 times a year, I get dead baby sparrows on my deck because they have shoved out what I have to believe they think are their inferior children. And it makes me really sad.
We're not going to end there.
Okay, Jonah, here's my question,
yes.
though, because I don't understand how men don't smell things like I smell. I mean, my whole life, like I'm like a wolfhound or something. Like I'm just smelling things constantly. So if you're away from your wife for a week or more at a time on a relatively, like that happens, right? When you come home and kiss her, like, is that like oh, yes, like that, the flood of memories and like all of that? Because like that, not the feeling, but the taste, smell, whatever you want to call it.
Yes. I mean, I think yes. It's not Proust Madeleine, kind of thing, but yeah, for sure.
But like, that's your penguin. Like you would recognize her versus like if I had, Face Off. Like, that's not
for
right.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you, I mean, again, you're a little too young, but there are bars in Fairbanks, Alaska that I've been to, and a bar or two in Wyoming that still allow indoor smoking. And the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke in the carpet fibers is one of the most powerful time traveling experiences one can still have.
No, I very much remember that.
You forget that decades have a smell to them.
Yeah.
And like that's really profound.
Grandparent house smell. Everyone knows
For
grandparent
sure.
house smell.
Yeah.
Now it's the smell. It's sort of terrifying, right? Because it's the smell of like decaying live humans.
Well, and weird harsh chemicals that deal with it. Right. It's sort of like antiseptic chemicals that
Yeah,
there's an iodine thing going on. I don't know where it's coming from, but
I don't know.
any final words that you would like to provide that could possibly justify this incredibly self-indulgent conversation?
Back to happiness.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely am happier in my 40s than I was in my 30s, and happier in my 30s than I was in my 20s, and happier in my 20s than I was in my teens. Is that your experience? You can add a decade.
Yes and no. I mean, for all my talk about like driving around in the invisible Honda Civic, I had a fun time in my 20s, and I had a pretty great time in college and in high school. But then again, the problem is like I've swapped out different things in my portfolio,
Right.
right?
It's the money
So
time
like,
problem, right? You've got the time,
yeah,
but
that
not the
kind of
money in your
thing.
20s.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I really, people don't believe this of me for reasons I guess I find understandable. But it's very difficult for me to explain to people what an unbelievable screw up I was in high school, and that I got rejected from every college I applied to, and the stress of all of that was real. And it was one of the things that drove me to overcompensate to prove that, to get the chip off of my shoulder, right? And but the stress of all of that was very, 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 very real. But I don't feel any of that stress anymore, right? I mean, like, there's still things I'd like to accomplish, but like, I don't feel like I'm very comfortable with who I am and what I've accomplished, and I'm very
You're right. What if I'm
all that kind of,
defining happiness as just stress reduction?
yeah, it's a big chunk of it, right? And so
Life,
like,
like existential stress.
yeah, like I don't. I mean, Jonathan Rauch wrote a book about this, how why people get happier in their 50s, and it's a real thing. And I think, like, obviously I've got regrets. There are things I wish I had done or not done and all that kind of crap. But like, um, the things that bother me now aren't the things that bothered me back then. And it's sort of like, do I take the Inca idol and replace it with a bag of sand? It's like, what am I replacing? What am I not? But I don't think it was just sort of like I was always that my progression wasn't happier the next 10, by decade like that. There were things that varied. And some of that has to do with like I've had a really depressingly large amount of death go on in my life. It only coincidentally has to do with my age, right? It's not like, he turned 50 and all these people dropped dead. It's like it just happened to be in the timeline when these various things happened. And that helps illuminate a lot of things about the stuff that's important or not important. And it can overpower. It's like in this Bryce book. I know I'm rambling in the Bryce about the history of nearly everything. I think one of the things he gets sort of philosophically wrong about extinction stuff is there was literally nothing prior to humans, there was nothing the animals could do to avoid extinction, right? If you had told the dinosaurs 10 years in advance, get busy, there's an asteroid coming, they couldn't do anything about it because, there was no time to get thumbs and brains, right? With humans, it's different. And so exogenous events in your real life, you have the ability to adapt to, but they also have ways of impacting, not to be too on the nose with the metaphor of asteroids, of impacting your life in ways that have less to do with this natural evolution of happiness kind of stuff that it's difficult to extrapolate from. I mean, I know a bunch of people my age or your age or somewhere in between really struggling with aging parents. that is a drag. And there's a certain amount of guilt that comes with it, but also a profound sense of relief when that stage is over. Just like in terms of the mental bandwidth of not having to think about that crap anymore and like drop everything and run to go do the right thing. There's also that feeling like I miss the days when my kid was in grade school and in high school and in college, but there's also a great relief that okay, we've checked those boxes, that kind of thing. And how you score all that, I think, just really depends on your personal life circumstances, if that makes any sense.
Hashtag life.
Life. All right. I think that's gonna be the title of the show. Hashtag life. People are gonna think it's like living it all out in social media, where you're living the hashtag life, which is not what I mean. So, Sarah Isgur, host of the Advisory Opinions podcast, which often has a frequent guest, David French, a man whose legal wisdom is inversely proportional to his movie knowledge and taste, and Poobah over at SCOTUS blog. And how's all that going, by the way? Are you feeling good about it, or do you want to talk off air?
I'm feeling no. We have a lot to build, rebuild, got ideas, and I feel like with the Supreme Court, more than like, let's say, the dispatch or politics, there are start dates and end dates and stuff. Yeah. And so like that first Monday in October is a somewhat artificial deadline, but not artificial also. Like the start of the term, we want it to be like shiny and beautiful and have all sorts of new bells and whistles for people to enjoy. So yeah, I mean, it's we're working pretty hard over here.
Yeah, I never really thought about that like the court beat is among the most, it's not completely plannable, emergency docket and all that kind of stuff, but it's among the most plannable beats of important beats in journalism, right?
I mean, it's why appellate law is so attractive to people. Like if you're a trial lawyer, like you don't know what's going to happen the next day, the next hour. Appellate lawyers are like, I know what's happening 30 days from now.
Yeah. It's sort of like one of the advantages of sports journalism is like you get the game schedule, you can make plans, that kind of stuff. You know when the Super Bowl is going to be.
Yeah, we basically have a game schedule for the Supreme Court. So yeah.
All right. We can just tell that neither of us really want to go back to our normal lives.
No, clearly.
And that's why we're just dragging this out. So next time we'll do it later into cocktail hour. Okay. For people who wanted life hacks, by the way, get a good quality martini glass and put a tiny bit of water in the bottom of the glass and put it in the freezer. So it'll keep that little ice on the bottom won't dilute your martini, but it'll keep your martini colder much longer. There's your life hack.
It's a good one.
With that, thank you for listening. Sarah will obviously be back, and we're done. Okay, we're done. That was a long run to ask of people. Thank you to Sarah for being such a good sport and for just wanting to stay and chat. I thought it was great to catch up with her. Let me know if you want us to do this again. That's fine. I'm always happy to talk to Sarah. Let me know if you don't want us to do it again. That's fine too. Maybe we've just sort of scratched that itch. Whichever. Interested in the feedback. I hope we answered enough people's questions. We got a lot. And that's all I got. So I'm done. I'll see you next time.
No, you won't. It's a podcast.